Well, good evening and welcome to this third part of our American Creed, a Community Conversation series. Yes, I'm supposed to say. We're filming this for Studio One, so we'd appreciate if you ask a question, wait for the microphone so they can hear it, and our panel will use the microphone too. I know they can speak loudly because they're educators, but I want that opportunity. This was a grant we received from the American Library Association, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and Citizen Film. And our first session was viewing the film and talking about what it means to have an American creed and what you consider an American, who is an American. So that's what your Post-it note is. You have two Post-it notes. One, please write down what you think it means to be an American. And on the other one, you can, if you don't want to ask a question out loud, you could write it on there and we'll hand it to our panel. The panel is going to introduce themselves. I shouldn't say the panel, the members of the panel will introduce themselves, and then they're going to have some questions they'll respond to. And then toward the end, our library director, Michelle, will also talk about what the library is doing to go forward with this conversation we want to have. And feel free to ask questions as we go along. Am I missing anything? No. All right, thank you for all being here instead of at the grocery store preparing for the store. We're glad you're here. And I'm going to turn it over to Cassie Williams.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
You know, I need some spoken word, you know, I need some feedback. But anyway, I'm Cassie Williams. I'm the academic specialist for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and Access, Opportunity, and Success. And so I will be facilitating discussion today. You know, like Paula said, this is our third session, and we've had wonderful conversations. And so we started out the first event with a film, the film American Creed. And so since then, we've talked about the film, as well as farming, agriculture, and today, civic engagement. And so our group of lovely panelists will talk about their experience and the work that they are doing. And so to start out, would you please tell us who you are and discuss your work in the community?
Hello, I'm Michelle Nexturner. I'm the Associate Director of Access, Opportunity, and Success at Southwest Minnesota State University. My civic engagement work has focused around serving as a VISTA volunteer for the Minnesota Literacy Council. VISTA is Volunteers in Service to America. That was my first real engagement into being a volunteer. And I originally started with a 8-week program, which was called a VISTA Associate, that worked with Minneapolis in the Franklin Avenue area, which is predominantly American Indian populations. And I worked in different community centers as well as a public school, providing information on America Reads and working with students one-on-one. From there, then I took a year-long position with the Literacy Council, and I then began operating the actual America Reads program that I had participated in. And then the following year, I did a second year as a VISTA leader, and I was in charge of 14 other VISTAs throughout the state of Minnesota who were incorporating and creating programming like the America Reads program that I had participated in. So that was the beginning of my adventure into that, and that's kind of everything that was a basis for me. I went to work for the University of Minnesota, and I had the opportunity to participate in a program called Expanding the Circle, which worked with the Dakota communities in Minnesota. And we had a large component that was civic engagement, as well as experiential ed-based. And we worked with the National Youth Leadership Council, and we worked with students to look at their home communities, find out what their needs were, and then for the students to come up with a project, and then work to develop that project within their community so that they could see it grow and blossom. So that was kind of another step to it. Today I currently serve with the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. I'm on their board. I'm also the treasurer for them, and it has been a wonderful experience. I'm in my third year of the term there, and I've learned so much about just what the arts in Minnesota can do and provide for the community, and I'm glad to be able to be a part of that. And then I do small things. I help run, well, it's not small, but the Dakota 38, I help organize their visit when they come through Marshall in December every year. I help find people to help feed them, provide monetary means to give them dinner as well as breakfast. And then with the help of Southwest Minnesota State University, we are able to provide them with an overnight accommodation. And then I just do small things like Big Buddies and, you know, different things like that in different capacities.
All right, I'm Christine Olson, and I teach in the psychology program. I've been here 20 years, moved up from Arizona, and when I arrived here, I had been previously working at Arizona State University, and I had some experience working with about 40 faculty at Arizona State University who were involved with service learning. So when I arrived, I was looking to see if we might have a similar center or office, and I realized we didn't at the time. So we had about, I'd say maybe 10 to 15 core faculty and staff who kind of pulled together and thought through what could we do to establish this sort of center. So we found an empty office in the social science building and set it up in this teeny tiny office at first. And actually we received VISTA funding for 3 years so we could have a full-time VISTA helping to get it started. And then most recently, well, I'd say for maybe over 10 years' time, I co-coordinated with Scott Peterson in our psychology program efforts that related to service learning and specifically trying to build some sustainable resources. And probably the one that I've been most happy about is, well, one, we were able to make the Center for Civic and Community Engagement centrally located in the same building as our library. It's coordinated by Melissa Skolton now there. And we were able to set up a platform that students, faculty, and staff could use to learn about where the needs are in the community and what's going on, volunteer experiences, fundraising opportunities, advocacy efforts, and so forth. So what we had was we used to have sort of a drop-down list, here are contacts in the community, area not-for-profits, and now what we have instead is a way for students, faculty, and staff to log on in a real-time way, see that, you know, this is going on Friday night. It addresses food insecurity for kids on weekends in local public schools. So it's very real-time, and it's basically a bridge to United Way, a database of area agencies. So we feel really good about that, but we're in the process of trying to get the word out about that. So a lot of my effort right now is say working with our admissions staff. So students, even as juniors and seniors, when they come to see whether SMSU would be a good fit for them, we're making them aware of that resource, that way to connect to the community of the region. Personally, I'm really committed to, I teach in the psychology program, and nationally, if you look at prevalence of mental health problems in the United States, about 1 in 5 will seek formal therapy, which means 4 in 5 are not, and that's especially the case in rural communities. So since Melissa Skolton has taken over as coordinator, I kind of pulled back into psychology program. And a couple of years ago, I started teaching 1-credit mental health topics courses. For example, one semester might focus on eating disorders, another on anxiety or depression. But they're really geared towards non-majors and any community members who might be interested in taking the courses. So that's one way our psychology program is trying to reach out and better meet some of the mental health needs of the community. And most recently, we're in the process, actually this semester, of pulling together a new major called Community Psych and Health Promotion. So we just feel good that we're better equipping our students to go out into the community and region to address mental health concerns. And then in terms of volunteer efforts, I've always been committed to hunger alleviation and food insecurity. My parents did a lot of work. My dad was involved with disaster relief work for 12 years, first in Brazil and then all through Latin America. So I grew up with lots of table talk, lots of dinner conversations around hunger alleviation in a global way. With my interest in health promotion, I volunteer at the YMCA pretty regularly and want to do more there as well. And I'm just, making regular announcements to students in our classes about Mustang Volunteers, how it's a resource, what's going on this week, and trying to help our students feel increasingly connected to the community region through their awareness of area concerns and opportunities for service and so forth. So I'll leave it at that, and there's lots more questions.
Hi, my name is Momo, and I'm glad to be here. I've been to this morning twice at the SMSU, and I see some familiar face. So yeah, and by the past 2 years, I've been working with the literacy volunteer and Get Point community. So I got to know some really nice people, Darwin and Paula and some other library and stuff. So currently, I'm working for the public school as a parent, student, and teachers connector. They have 3 different connectors. They're working with 3 different cultures. One is Somali culture, and the other one is Hispanic, Latino population. And I'm the one that working with the Korean immigrants. They're from Thailand. They're refugee, and we came here. We are like really new, like fresh immigrant. We came here 10 years ago. Myself, I've been in the country for almost 6 years. And last year I became the citizen, so was really excited. Got my passport, got to travel, so it was a privilege. The first time in my life. So Marshall Public School have many immigrant families, and some are not new immigrant, like the Hispanic population been here like very long time. I mean, I don't know, many years. Many years. So especially the Somali, even though Somali been here longer than the Korean population, but Korean population they've been here almost like 5 years. Like when I moved to here, we have only like families from St. Paul, Washington. They came here to work at Turkey Valley, but now we have families from the other states move here and settle down. They bought their house and they bring their families, and they make Marshall their home. So there's a need at the school to help these parents, because we are like first generation immigrant, and for like parents like us and some other languages are really like barrier to help our kids like to achieve the same level as the other kids. So that is started from like conversation with teachers and parents and with the need, and then later on, I guess the school figured out that they need connectors to help connect this piece. Like when the teachers need to call the parents, and when they don't understand the language, it's really difficult. And when the parents have concern about their children or their children sick, they wanted to report. And when they don't understand the language, like they don't know how to like call school or what to do, it's really like difficult. So now that they have the connectors, that they really like help out with the parents and teachers and all their needs. And I don't know about the other population, but Korean population, we have a little more than 200 families, which is a lot consider. So for school, preschool and to like high school, it's really keep me going all day. I always agree, because I was right now substitute only, so I always agreed to like work like 4 hours a day. Then someday I end up working 10 hours. It won't stop. They call me and they're like, "Are you working today?" Well, what's the matter now? You already called me and there is a need. And can I say, no, I'm not working? No, I can't. So yeah, I'm really enjoy working in this community and get to know people. And yeah, and I'm glad that other families, I mean the Korean families, they enjoy the small community, because when we came from refugee, they normally put us in like big city, which is really, really difficult to navigate when you don't know the language and you came from refugee, which is really like how do I say, we're not like, we cut out with a lot of things that we don't know, because in refugee camp we don't have like internet connection, and we don't know like what is going on in the world. Just like today in the class, one of the students asked, do I know Kardashian? No, I just know Kardashian last year, so there's no Wi-Fi and you know, things like that. So people really enjoy coming to a small town like this, and they really like to have like peaceful place and quiet and clean and have a lot of support. So I'm thankful for that. I'm happy to be here tonight too.
I could just listen to you all day, every day. My name is Crystal. I work at SMSU. I am a current AmeriCorps Vista. And as Michelle said, they stand for Volunteer in Service to America. And what Vistas do is they've been tasked since the mid-60s to fight poverty in whatever ways it presents itself. And that could be access to healthcare, it could be access to housing, it could be literacy. We've got Tutor Corps, Math Corps, Reading Corps, and then for me, I'm part of the College Health Corps cohort working out of the cities. And poverty for the SMSU campus right now, our focus is food insecurity. So it's a lack of access at times to healthy and nutritious foods, and it doesn't include ramen. You know, for whatever reason, our students are struggling, and actually the U.S. government has issued a memorandum to Congress saying we are failing our students. Our financial aid system is broken, things are not lasting the way that they need to, and it's very evident even in rural campuses. And so I was tasked with researching the issue. SMSU got the ball rolling with the hunger survey in fall of 2017. It found that some students within the 30 days of the survey had experienced homelessness. They were either sharing resources or stealing from each other, and they were potentially dropping out because they just couldn't meet their basic needs. So myself as a Vista, I applied for the job and got it, woohoo! I just did months of research on it, both on the local, state, national level, figuring out what does the USDA say that food insecurity is, what is a food desert, who's talking about this issue and why, who is it affecting more, what are our resources, what do we have enough resources, are we streamlining our resources, all of that. I've chased every single rabbit hole that I possibly could go down. I did not find Alice, but I found a lot of other things. And that led me all the way out to Philadelphia to take part of the national conversation. And so now SMSU is going to be taking part of that national conversation as well, hopefully doing more of a national-based survey and coming up with services for the students, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But so I am an SMSU alumni, alumnus, however you say that word. I went to college, but I don't know the word. When I graduated last year, I decided to go back to school at the ripe old age of 35. Actually, Mumu gave our valedictorian speech. So I remember her talking last year, and very, very wonderful, her accomplishments, what she did as an undergrad. And I think everybody has their own experience with education, and we can all be lifelong learners, whether you're in school or not. And so that's just, it's not my end. My degree is not my end. I'm sure for Mumu it's the same. We're going to continue to be lifelong learners, and that's just kind of what school ignites for us.
Well, thank you for sharing your background. You all are doing amazing work. So, in your opinion, how does civic engagement play a role in what it means to be an American?
I'll go first. I'm going to start, and I'm going to take it a few steps back. So, what you were mentioning, Crystal, with your work with food insecurity, because I think it illustrates a bit of what I consider to be the place for civic engagement in a democracy. And first thing I think about is a collective aspect, integral to it, that you're working with others, and that involves forming relationships and in dialogue, figuring out shared concerns. And I was thinking about the example that I'm going to give relates to Crystal's work with food insecurity in this way. For a number of years, we had a full-time Vista, and I'm just going to say how incredible that is to have a 40-hour-a-week resource when we don't have, say, a line for staffing. Vista's really helped to get things going in the years we were able to have them in our office there at SMSU. But when we didn't have a VISTA, we'd often have interns and grad assistants and so forth. And one night, I was speaking with two recent graduates, two students who graduated last year. They were football players. They were both from Detroit. And we were talking about, basically it was shortly before finals in the fall semester, and we were joking because we were trying to come up with as many possible ways to consume potatoes, you know, mashed potatoes and potatoes with various toppings and so forth. And then we went on to oatmeal, ways you could make oatmeal at that point. And we basically ended up having a conversation about the need for having what we ultimately call the Mustang Resource Guide. And that is especially for students that are coming from outside, say a two-hour radius of Marshall. How do we help them identify where the most affordable places to get food? And how do one needed to buy a vehicle but didn't know anybody who could test drive it for them, for example. So we ended up sitting down, and for the next semester we came up with a Mustang, what we call the Mustang Resource Guide, and they wrote the first draft of that. But it came out of, you know, joking but laughing about the fact that they had $12.50 to live on for the next couple of weeks for food and so forth. So I think it illustrates the relational aspect of first coming to know one another, conversing about, you know, what challenges we're facing and so forth, but then taking that and saying, what can we do in a shared way that will help to address this? And I use this example because that Mustang Resource Guide, ultimately the next year we had a Health Corps Vista, Kelsey Stern at the time, and she had incredible ability she was just a very good writer. And she kind of took that Mustang resource to a whole nother level. And then you've heard Crystal's work from that point. So it just helps to illustrate how over 2.5 years' time, what happened in the evening conversation about how these students were going to get through the next 2 weeks on the budget they had, how it can result in incredible resources slowly and over time. So I guess I think of the collective nature of it, the relational nature, and identification of shared concerns, problem solving around those shared concerns. So I'll start with that. And anybody else want to go next?
What does it mean to be, how does this play into being an American? Well, civic engagement, it's active, it's not passive. The very word in itself means active, you know, it just evokes that kind of feeling. So, but you can be engaged in so many different ways and so many different lenses. You can do the research, you can do the surveys, you can be an outspoken person and continue talking about it and networking, and you can put together presentations and you can put forth legislation. There's just so many ways to be civically engaged. And you know, America was founded through civic engagement. It was a bunch of people that came together. Who's talking about what? Who's doing something about it? Okay, let's get together. Let's use that collective nature to do something about it. And you know, they laid the groundwork for what civic engagement really means. And without that, you know, we wouldn't have the type of setup that we do right now. So that's what I think of as far as civic engagement goes and being part of the American fabric. It just wouldn't be American fabric without it, I don't think.
To me, I think if you've been in a different country and you came to America, you will know that in America you have the privilege and you have the freedom to do what you want and what you like to better your community. You have the choice. You can do it freely. And when I say that, I mean, for example, like in my country, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, but private citizens like us, like this, we can gather and we can discuss it, and we can do it freely. We get arrested, and you know, we are not allowed to do that. So to be America is we have the freedom to come together and make our community a better place. Like Krista and like you already said, yes, a lot of issues, and now they are making progress to, you know, to eliminate hunger in the campus or in the community. and we have the freedom to do that. And we can like go out and ask people to do that, and we can come together and do that. So sometimes like we forget, maybe we forgot that, or maybe we don't know it, that there is a really privilege that some other country and some other citizen does not have it. So that's to be America is you have the freedom to make your community, your society a better place and build your own community.
When I think about it, I think about all of the people that I've known growing up who have given their time and volunteered their time in some sort of community capacity. When I met my husband, I met my father-in-law, of course, and I was amazed by his civic mindedness, just how engaged he was with the community that he was living in. He served as mayor, he was on school board, he operated with, there's a women's circle that does a rummage sale that in the state of Minnesota has the longest running rummage sale in existence in the state of Minnesota, and he helps gather the items and gets it all set up, and just very proud of those things. So, I mean, just think about that and the impact that that's had on me. And there's other individuals that my parents were friends with, because my dad was busy being the coach and my mom had to be the teacher with that and take care of my brother and I. It was their friends who really showed a lot of civic engagement. I had friends with Peace Corps members, and just people really integral parts of the community. And that really shaped my own presence. And then combine that with who I am as a Lakota and how my mother raised me to think about generosity and leadership and being able to provide different things to the overall community by giving back. And I knew that I had a sense of privilege from what I have obtained from my parents and who they are. And I've always wanted to be able to give that back to different people as well.
All right, thank you. So our next question, you know, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to know, you know, from the time kids are young, we try to mold them into having a civic mind. And we encourage our college students that they really need civic engagement, you know. We give extra credit for it. We tell them they need it for their resumes. So why is it necessary in building a community?
I guess I'll speak again to what I was saying. I think that, first of all, I know that I didn't mention earlier, but I have a broad view of civic engagement. I know that our campus thinks about it in a broad way, so I'll just let you give some examples of how we think about it as MSU, and it's been captured by some of what each of you mentioned up here, but you know, Lulu mentioned the privilege of being able to think through how to bring change about in constructive ways, which includes voting, which includes public policy change. Is this not on? Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So voting, volunteerism, public discourse, like what's happening right now. Earlier this afternoon, the example of sitting on local boards, especially the invitation to students to sit on those boards. It's tax time. We have Will Thomas on our campus in the county has for many years had a commitment with his students to help with tax preparation. So those sustained partnerships over time versus those one-time events, though they have their meaningful place, those one-time events. But I think the way the community is fostered is I think as you're when you're trying to bring about change, like in our case, trying to help meet the needs of students who were struggling with not having enough food or accessing various resources, like being able to buy a car, some examples I gave earlier. You're working side by side with people. And it's a very rough draft nature. So sometimes you're laughing, sometimes you're like, oh, like darn, this took forever to put together, and only 2 people showed up. And you know, you're making your way through the process of bringing that change, often over a longer period of time, and sometimes with not immediate results. So I think you form relationships out of that. in your frustrations, I know for me and the students I work with, it often prompts a curiosity, a motivation to learn more about the topic, to explore a variety of avenues for meeting whatever it is that we're working on. So I think community is formed in the mess of all that, as you're trying to bring about constructive change and become more aware of not just the problem you're solving locally, but what's going on in a larger context, the state or the nation, where you can look at how your vote counts and how it's related to the work you're doing locally. So for me, it's that sustained work over time, relational aspect, and the sort of shared commitment and the learning that happens about your local issue as it relates to sort of broader context, statewide and nationally.
So if you think of two sides of a coin, civic engagement would be one side and then the community would be the other side. And so in that light, we can't have something to vote on if no one is willing to stand in representation of it. But we can't stand in representation of that thing without supporters of a cause that we're addressing. And so they go hand in hand. If you're going to build a community, it's not just a bunch of people showing up, okay, we're just gonna plop down here, hey, how's it going? You have to have a structure and a set of laws and a governance of how that works, and that all takes people who are civically minded that are going to be willing to step up, and then those people underneath supporting their efforts to make sure that everything happens for the good of the body.
I'd like to talk to students about doing civic engagements or volunteering to help them increase their resume, like we discussed. A lot of times, Cassie and I have the opportunity to interview students every year to be a part of our Summer Bridge Mentor program. And students will sit in front of us and we ask them questions, and they cannot articulate what they've done, or they have a difficult time describing their own leadership ability. And so one of the things that we've done in our office is really talk to them about expanding into volunteering, being a part of organizations on campus so that they can build their experience and their knowledge base in order to help them gain and strengthen their leadership skills that they have. Then they can articulate about it as well. And for some of the students, it's just allowing them to have something that they've, for the first time, had ownership in, where they've created a program, they've implemented it, and they've seen success in it. And I think that is a huge part of it. I wish more students were able to engage in that and to be able to find the time. I know there's a lot of demands, and there's work, and there's money that needs to be made in order to be able to go to school too. And so it can be challenging. But I think that those opportunities to volunteer and to utilize the community that you're engaged with during your academic career really helps perpetuate you when you're out looking for a job and getting hired.
Thank you. So, you know, you are doing great work, and so much to be done in the community, right? We deal with hunger, violence, just access, you know, limited access. And so, based on your experience, or maybe even things that you encountered or saw, or you were existing in the environment that you lived in, how did you determine what projects to focus on?
I'll go first since I have the microphone now. I totally answered this question as me just being selfish. I chose my own things that I wanted to learn about and know more about. And in my life, I'm continually trying to learn and evolve about who I am as a Sichangu Lakota. And so a lot of the volunteer programs and things that I've done have all been to put myself in situations where I can work more with American Indian communities. It was very purposeful, and for me, I knew that it would be something I would be engaged in, and I knew it would be something that I would benefit from. And I was thankful that I was able to help other people along the way and help empower and strengthen different American Indian students in their process and in their growth.
This came up in the noon panel today, but basically, I think what prompts my commitments is often, it's often grown out of a hardship encountered of some sort. So the example I gave earlier today was when I have 9 nieces and nephews, but 2 of them are attending, the twins are attending a university in New Mexico State University. One's been playing soccer there, Division I, and kind of a big deal, freshman, got a lot of play time. But last fall, towards the end of the season, she had a major concussion. Normally you can get over that in 2 to 3 months, but she hasn't healed. And it looks like they're maybe looking at a whole nother year. And that's changed my view significantly to see her cognitive impairments and see her struggles. So as I think about it, I'm thinking, how does that connect with Marshall and the work that I do here? And the way it connects is, with a hardship like that, or any hardship any one of us is facing, there's often only so much immediate control we have over how we can address it. I can't make her brain better right now, So as I think about what can I do, and what helps me feel like helps me to turn this into something constructive. I feel better when I look around and I think, well, each of my classrooms has athletes and others who are at risk of similar injury. So I've put together resources and kind of made handouts informally that I can give to students that will help them become more aware of where relevant foundations, relevant organizations. So I've tried to be selective with those individual conversations with students. I've spoken with the YMCA director, and I have a nephew working there, so I would like to do a workshop at some point on the topic. But I think taking some step like that grows out of a hardship, first of all, I feel intrinsically motivated for it, and secondly, to take something that's personal in that way, but then look at the immediate context, the campus, the local community, and ask how can I translate that into something that's beneficial for my immediate, the sphere in which I move and live. That just helps. It helps me not to feel helpless. It helps me not to feel like the topic is so big that there's no way to move in a positive direction. So that figures into personal commitments. Similarly, another thing that figures into my commitments is thinking through what's been my unique path, my knowledge base, my formal training, and I'm not good at many things, but what things might I be at least sort of okay with. So for me, that's I teach I have a clinical background. I have a doctorate in counseling psychology, and so mental health education is important to me, and I'm able to draw from formal training and able to work that into the job that I have day to day, setting up these mental health topics courses, the new major that helps to address mental health education, helps equip our students to do some of that kind of work. So I think how can we draw from our strengths and our knowledge base? And one of the best things about being involved with community problem solving is you just learn so much about the strengths of others. It's always interesting to see who shows up in a group and the unique strengths that each brings to the effort. It's one of my favorite parts of that kind of community problem solving.
For me, to determine what to focus on, it's come with my experience. So when I came into United States, I came with nothing. I mean nothing. I don't speak the language. I don't have family members that I know here, and I don't have any friends that I know, and I don't know the culture and the people here. Just like that, they put you somewhere, and we've been there. They put us in my family, Houston, Texas, apartment. We never been to a place like that. We were very scared. We just closed the door like the whole week, and we picking up who is out there, and we were really scared. Like when somebody knocked on the door, like we don't know who's out there, and the time change also. The first week, the first month, we sleep throughout the days, and at night we wake up and cook, and we feel like dragging the house. But my experience was that the hardship of not knowing the language. When I came there and I need to get a job right away to be able to pay for my rent, mostly people think we come in and there is a lot of money for us and we get everything free. No, we've been trained already, like we've been given orientation. If you go there, this is what you have to do. You have to stand by yourself, you have to work, pay for your rent, pay by your travel loan, everything. So everything's already in here, but the problem is where we gonna get a job when we don't have the skill that match the jobs that are available here, because we came from refugee and there's different things. We built our own house with bamboo, no electricity or anything like that. So here is a different set of skills that are required to get into workforce, and even like to function like daily. Like when I go to get my driver license, I have to go back, not the driver license, driver permit, just to have ID, and have to go back 3 times. They ask me, you have to bring your utility. What is utility? I have no idea. I told them, I don't have anything, any paper. My caseworker take care of it. She was like, you have that, you live in a house, you have the light, right? I have the light, but what is utility? I don't know. And then, like they asked me 4 times, and she just keeps saying that, not explaining to me. She just say, utility, bring it to me. And then I have to, like, in a big city, it's not like here you go and you sit for 15 minutes and you get over there, you have to wait 100 people in front of you. So you have to get a day off from a job. So to get 3 days off, it's really worrying me how I'm gonna pay my rent. I broke it down, cried. There, one of the Vietnamese men, he asked me, do you speak Vietnamese? No, don't speak Vietnamese and don't understand. He was trying to help me. So it started from there. I know that how difficult it is, and I wanted to learn. And I started to learn by helping the other people. Like I wanted to know how to open a bank account. I already opened once. I go there and I speak my broken language. They don't understand. Sit there for hours, try to figure out. I got it. Next time someone say, I don't have my bank account. How can I get that? I know a little bit, and I'm really nervous, scared. But I tell the person, I know how to do that. Let's go and I help you. Then I take the person. The next person say, I need bank account. Okay, I go with you. We go, and 2, 3, 4 times. Now I'm fluent. I know what is how to open bank accounts, what you need, kind of that. And if the next person say, I want to get my permit, how do I get that? I know that, let's go, I can take you there. We go there, we try to figure out, it's difficult, nervous, speak broken language, and the essay is not correct, the grammar is not correct, it's okay, try to figure out. 2, 3, 4 times, I get it. Next time I'm expiring everything. I'm kind of become like a referrer. So sometimes my husband teaches me that you should open your own referral service and get paid for that, because people call me for how to apply for my citizenship, where to go, how to call for my dentist appointment, and how to write my resume. I want to buy a house, who to go to, kind of that. So I refer everyone. And the only things that I don't like doing is helping people by doing everything for them. I never done that. If they say, oh, I need to buy a house and I want to buy a house, can you help me? I pay you this much, that much. No, I know that person, she is a broker. All you need to do is I call you, set an appointment, you go to her, everything will be fine. You don't need to pay me. Try to figure out a little bit by yourself. I do that because I want people to stand by themselves, because there won't be somebody like me always there to helping out everything. We help people by teaching them. There's the way how I help people. Like this morning I said, we always disagree, or we always struggle with sharing resource. We think a few people think, or maybe a lot, I don't know, immigrant come in to drain the resource. So So then, what do they need? They need to survive, they need to live. So in order, if you don't want to share the resource that you have, teach them how to stand by themselves, guide them, show them. If you don't want to share your fish, teach them how to fish. If you don't want to share your vegetable, your fruits, teach them how to garden. So this is how like you can like help people, and this is the way I figure out like what issue to focus, like what the project. And the issue is like I wanted to help my people to be self-sufficient, and I've been doing that as much as I could, but still need a lot of help from the people and the community itself. So.
Yeah, I think most causes start on something that's personal. So, you know, as an AmeriCorps Vista, I'm tasked with helping college students with their basic needs and securities. And I just graduated last May myself, but I went back to school at age 35. Well, I started my college journey 15 plus years ago, and I had to stop just 3 credits shy because I was about to be homeless. So I've never had a problem finding a job ever in my life. I can get a job, I can keep a job, I've formed lasting relationships through jobs. It's never been a problem. The problem lies in, I got to this point in my life where at that time I was married and I owned property and I'd been working at a factory for the last 9 years, and I had a really, really bad day, and I had the wherewithal in that really horrible moment to say, is this all there is? Like, is what I know all that I'm ever going to know in this life? And if it is, boy, that's at age 35 at that time, that's going to be a sad life. And at that time, you know, a lot of the political climate was heating up too, and I'm just like, I want to know more. So I go back to school, and at the time I went back, I was focused on, okay, I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to get my classes, and I'm going to leave, and I'm going to be done. I'll finally have this checklist marked off. I walked through those doors and I got way more than just an education. The types of people that I went to school with, the educators that were very proactive in tackling very tough subjects, really challenged me right down to my core and fabric of my belief systems. And so now I have this lifelong learner outlook. I will never go through thinking that I've got enough, I know enough in this life and this is good enough, because it's not good enough. And I wish more people were like that. I wish more people could have that experience of at least going back to learn something new in their life. And it doesn't matter if it's crochet or, you know, painting or whatever. If you can tackle something that's new, that's a learning experience, and it really opens a lot of doors for you. It starts a lot of conversations. So this led me into my internship for my degree was through the Civic Engagement Office. In their new location on the university campus. And then through that I learned about the Vista position. And let me tell you something, Vista is an experience for if you're a college student right now and you're looking for a gap year opportunity between your undergrad and your graduate degree. Excellent opportunity. If you ever want to know what it's like to just dip your toe in the world of nonprofit, do Vista. It's like learning nonprofit by drinking through a fire hose. But it's one of the best experiences of my life, and actually I'm extending for a second year Vista so I can continue service here on this campus so we can see our current project through to completion, because I know what it's like to be hungry. I was the daughter of 2 military men. My dad was Air Force for 15, my stepdad was Navy for 23, and those are some of the poorest families that you'll find in America. It's just they have to be mobile. But you know, we struggled, and so for me to have to stop college at that young age and give up opportunities in order just to feed myself, it just breaks my heart when I see college students suffering with that too. And we've got ideas, we just need to find out what they are and who's talking about it and move forward from there.
Okay, so one last question before we open it up to questions and comments, because we definitely want to hear what you all are doing in the community, and if you also have any questions for the panelists. But what are your biggest challenges with doing the work?
For me, it's time, having enough time to do all the different things that I would like to be able to do. Just listening to everyone is like, oh, I can do something like that. Or, oh, wow, you know, you realize what's available, and if I have more time, what I could do with it. So that's my biggest challenge. I already do quite a bit, so I just need to allow myself to soak that in and be a part of that time.
I would say for me, maybe sometimes if I'm working with a few others and coming up with, I'll use the example of Mustang Volunteers. It took a full 2.5 years to work with United Way to figure out how we could connect with that database. Technical aspects, like no one would hire me for technical assistance. Thank goodness Scott has that background, but I'm more interested and better able to do work with promoting it. But you know, when I asked students in the earlier group today, how many of them were on making full use of Mustang Volunteers, accessing that database, a few hands went up. So I was like, oh, work to do. Trying to continue to make students aware of that as a resource so that they can better connect with the community. So I think the challenge is wanting things to happen more quickly than they sometimes do, staying with it, trying to sustain yourself with your efforts as you're working with others. But I think also, I'm just going to add a side note because the challenge is it's hugely gratifying. So for example, I'm very deliberate with making announcements in class to let students know, pull up Mustang Volunteers and say, here's a fundraiser that's addressing hunger for kids on weekends, pancake feed with the local fire department, bring your friend. So to make students aware in a very real day-to-day way, how they can connect is hugely gratifying. So there's gratifying aspects along with the challenges. And I'm absolutely unapologetic about giving extra credit to go to things or to help out with a volunteer effort. I've just found too often I see Anita over there, Anita Gall, who has taught in our history program here, and we have an excellent history program that does a series of talks on what it means to live in democracy often, historical context for that. So to attend those, easily, large majority of students who go out, they will write in the reflection notes. I wouldn't have gone unless I had to for class. I'm so glad I went. So I think it often prompts curiosity, prompts more engagement in the community. And if you get that foot in the door, like if I make students aware of, say, we have adult basic education in our social science department, in our building that houses social science department. We have several offices associated with adult basic education. Well, those are volunteer opportunities for our students. So if they can get their foot in the door and say tutor even 1 hour a week, that has a humanizing effect on any reference ever made to literacy enhancement again. If they read about that in the paper, now there's a human face to it. So that's gratifying to help students gain those kinds of experiences, along with the challenges. Those are there as well.
I want to speak in my experience since I work with the immigrants. So there's a lot of challenges, because I've been helping people as much as I could, but myself, I still need help. So, there's a lot of things that need to be understand about the immigrant population and need to be known and they need to be helped. Then just only me, I don't know who to connect with in order to help these folk. And sometimes I have to face with the stereotype. One time my coworker she said, well, they're doing nothing, just making babies. Why they're not working? Why they're not learning English? Well, it's okay, let them make some babies. We need them. If we grow old, then who's gonna take care of the community? And the women are, everybody want to work and want to learn, but sometimes you couldn't find the right resources. For example, when I came to Marshall, I really want to go to college. And I was twice high school graduate. Once when I was in Myanmar, my own country, and second in Thailand when I went to refugee camp. And I was had 2 years junior college. And when I came here, they told me you don't have diploma here. You need to get your GED. I went to that time ABE was at the government center. I went there several times. I couldn't catch the teacher. So I was frustrated. I was like, well, how many high school diploma I need? I mean, so I just walk up to SMSU by myself. I don't know like how you're gonna apply for college or university. What do you need? I don't know. Which building you go? I went to the gym and I was about to cry because I lost and I didn't know anyone. So what I'm trying to say is, people came here and they wanted to be self-sufficient. They wanted to make this place a better place. When they came here, when we were refugees and they asked us, oh, you're going to America? No, we're going home. We never has home. So that's what we told people. We're going home since before we came here. So when we come here, we want education. We want skills so that we can work and we can like make this place a better place. So then we want that, so we need help for people to guide us and to help us like for like the first few years to be able like to stand by ourselves. We need the language and we need the community connection because we are a social animal. We can't live alone. If you live alone, you just die. That's not gonna happen. So we need to feel like we have the support, and we need to feel like people here understand us. Last couple of years, we do immigrant voice. We research. We carry and we have to interview like the immigrant family or people who are immigrant here and been here from like 5 to 10 years. And one of the women said that. She was like, I'm so glad that they asked me to like be interviewed by these students because I've been here 5 years. Nobody asked me where I'm from. Nobody asked me what is my language. Nobody asked me what is my background, why I came here, and who I am. I don't know anybody and nobody knows me. So civic engagement is a really like piece here when it's come to students or like working with students or working with people in your community and like I said, there's a programs and that have been going on and going well and we make a lot of progress and at the same time you don't have to be like I need to like be like systematically doing this or that, get involved in like large organization that well organized. You can be civically engaged by start talking to your neighbor, start talking to an immigrant and asking where they're from and what they do and what kind of help they need to be able to survive in this new environment. So I'm happy that compared to big city in Marshall, we got much more support. So that is something that I'm glad about.
So it just plays right in with what I was going to say as far as frustrations with the work and doing what I need to do. Getting buy-in from the community is really hard, either from an organizational standpoint, a business standpoint, or just a personal standpoint. When I first started in my position, I was trying to explain to a military recruiter of all people what I was doing and told him that students were struggling. He looked me in the face and he said, I'm not on board with what you're doing. Marshall doesn't have issues of poverty. He's like, you're not going to do well. And meanwhile, he's a rural white landowner who doesn't live in the city, and he's probably recruiting from some of the poorest people with little options that he can. So getting that type of buy-in is really hard because there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of stereotypes for the types of students that go to school. I just really hate coming across those Facebook memes that disparage college students and try to play the millennial card, and you just boil things down and want something that's so simple that it just doesn't even touch on the right points. So getting buy-in is a real big thing, but on top of that, it's outreach needs to be streamlined. So what do we have in Marshall? What types of services do we have? Do those services know about each other, and are they helping the right people? So if I take the example, even the example of what Mumu gave, if you're blowing into a brand new community, say you're newly single mom, you've got kids in tow, you're coasting into town on fumes in your gas tank, and maybe English is your second language, where do you begin? Where do you begin in Marshall? And I had the opportunity this last summer to actually start my life over again, but I was empowered enough to be able to walk into the courthouse, Southwest Health and Human Services, to say, hey, I think I qualify for this because of me coming from a place of privilege of being empowered throughout my childhood to be able to speak for myself within my own community. And my own community is wherever I go in the United States. That's how empowered and privileged I am. But for someone who has a language barrier, who needs services, who is very disadvantaged socioeconomically, racially, culturally, what does that look like in the city of Marshall? And when you look at it through that lens, we've got some holes to fill. And so part of my research is not just knowing, like, what do we have on campus, what do we have in Marshall, and what do we have in Lyon County? And then trying to get that right hand to start talking to the left hand so they can shake and we can come to some better options for our students and potentially for our community members. You know, what we're starting on the campus has an opportunity to blossom out to the community. We're just getting it started, so.
Thank you for that. So now we will open up to you all. If you want to share what you are doing in the community, or you have questions or comments about any of the things that have been said tonight.
First, building off of your comments on the SMSU History Department, I had been a judge at the Regional History Day competition held at SMSU back when I was in college, and no disrespect to other judges I've worked with over the years, but it definitely cheered me up to see other young people from the campus involved in that competition, for whatever that's worth. More immediately though, I'm glad that this conversation on civic engagement focused on tangible things that we're doing currently. I mean, the term civic engagement is a little nebulous. So in that spirit, I was curious what this panel, or really anyone else in the room at the moment, might be doing in terms of preparing for the census. Because there's, in my mind anyway, nothing more central to making civic engagement work than the census.
Any response?
That's an excellent question. I'm Michelle Leininger, and I'm the director of the library here. The library will be engaged, the American Library Association, make sure that all libraries understand how important it is to make sure that everybody's counted. And one of the things I was going to talk about at the end is libraries tend to carry something that they call social capital. Social capital is where people can feel free to be themselves and to engage in a variety of things regardless of privilege, immigrant status, whatever that looks like. And more in the world that we live in, there are less and less places that are like that. They're more and more segregated into not just socioeconomic or racial, but what I call tribes. People who have grouped together for whatever reason, and sometimes it's hard to cross that. There's very few places, libraries are one of those. And so in the last two census takings, I know that libraries have become more and more important, both the state and federal government. So I'll be serving on the city and county committee. We're getting ready. I know that they've gone to some training at the city and are starting to gear that up, but it's critically important, I think, that the library and other organizations, certainly the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will be engaged in that, I'm certain, as will parent partners and people like that who are into the more diverse segments of our community, because it's important that not only is everybody counted, but everybody gets to have their voice heard by being counted.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, from an American Indian standpoint, in the last 20 years we've had, when you mark your category on the race box, what you are, then it specifically asks for you to tell which tribal community you belong to. And I know within the United States, tribal communities have really put a lot of effort into making sure that their tribal identity is placed onto the census, so that there's an accurate count of who individuals are.
I was just going to use this as your question, your comment, as such a good example of the value of public discourse. And that is, like when you asked that, I was like, oh, I can't say what we're doing at SMSU in particulars, but I continue to sit on our faculty and staff advisory committee for the Center for Community Engagement. So as I was thinking through, or as I became aware that I can't speak to it in the concrete way, I started thinking the value of not sort of being an island out here in Marshall and in SMSU as a campus. We affiliate with an organization called Minnesota Campus Compact. It's a national organization, but it's an organization of about over 400 higher ed institutions who are saying they want to do more with civic engagement and stay in communication with one another about what we're doing in higher ed for that. And it occurred to me that I've seen some recent correspondence to the Minnesota Campus Compact resource site where we're able to better learn what other campuses are doing along those lines. So I intend to bring that to our next meeting and see what we can do to get it on the agenda and see if we can learn a bit about what other campuses are doing, see what more we can do and how we can involve students. So a good example of a question or comment prompting, oh, I don't know as much as I want to know about that. And I sit in this advisory capacity, so now I can bring that and we can learn about what other higher ed institutions are doing so we can do more. All right?
So I'm retired. I don't work for an organization anymore, but my wife and I, probably what we could be doing is just reaching out to especially new immigrants that we know and helping them through that process. But the other thing that I am doing is I'm in contact with my representative and senators about the importance of not having the are you a U.S. citizen question on the survey, the census, because that will actively discourage people. They'll be afraid of participating, and then we know what happens when the participation goes down. So that's the other thing that I'm doing.
Thank you, great comment. Any other questions, comments? Any needs that you see in the community that you would like to get involved in?
I think it was Crystal that brought up the subject of going back to college when you're older. I was 40 when I went back to school and got my degree at 47. But the reason, one of the main reasons that I'm mentioning this is because I worked for a nonprofit organization called Girl Scouts of America. And I worked for them, volunteered, first of all, because of my daughter being active in Girl Scouts and so forth. And because of my volunteer service, I worked for Girl Scouts for over 10 years and got paid. And it was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. So for those of you that are thinking about volunteering for something, it can lead to a good job. And I've known other friends of mine that have volunteered for things and ended up getting a job through that agency. And I've almost always been in the nonprofit sector. So of course I haven't made much money, but I've made lots of wonderful friends, and I think I made a difference for some of the people I worked with and for.
Great, thank you for that. And I was rooting because I actually was a Girl Scout leader for a while, so. All right, any other questions or comments? Any last words, panelists?
This afternoon, Cassie asked our audience to share with us what civic engagements or service learning opportunities that you've participated in. What have you done?
Anyone want to share?
You look like you want to share. Human relations, pick on.
Well, I guess the only thing I can think of with civic engagement that I've participated in is I participate in the Circle program over in Redwood. I'm not sure if Marshall has a Circle program.
They did. They did. Yeah.
So I guess the only thing I can say is it's a great experience, and I advise you to check it out at least. Just a good way to understand what's going on in the community and with the youth in the community also.
Thank you for sharing. What else are you all doing in the community?
So for this year, I actually coached wrestling at Marshall High School, and that involves Lakeview and RTR. So that was a really good experience that I'm happy I got a part of because I've met a lot of really cool athletes and just built like relationships, and just helping young athletes be better and reach their goals is, I think, is pretty great.
Woo-hoo, they took second in the
Yeah,
state.
it's a second state.
Anyone else?
Well, I'll just say, not so much talking about myself, but I think it's really the challenge for the Marshall community is having the different communities intersect. You know, it's, I've tried organizing different events and things like that, but you know, there's a part of our country that would love to see us be divided, because it's so much easier to just push forward with things that maybe are kind of unjust. But I just would love to find more ways for the different communities, different cultures, different socioeconomic groups to form relationships. You know, all of you were talking about the importance of relationship, and it's just exciting. And if we ever are going to make systematic change, you know, really big systematic change, we need to be working together.
Great comment.
Just have a question. I guess I just have a question. Mine would be, so when you are looking to get engaged in something, you know, we're in a small community. Sometimes it's really hard to find other like-minded people. And even when you do find a couple of like-minded people, with time constraints and resources, and just how do you, have you had any things that you found that have made it easier to get other people involved in things that you're working on, or getting people motivated and excited about things? Because I've had a couple of things where I've been really excited about, and when you get to a certain point and you get the same 3 people sitting around the table and you really don't feel like you're moving forward, eventually you just kind of lose momentum yourself and it just kind of fades away. And trying to find better ways around that. I know, like you said, you waited 2.5 years before your projects came through, but sometimes I don't have that much patience.
I want to answer that.
Just start squawking like a bird. And not to the same 3 people. I mean, you'll find with engagement or volunteerism of any kind, even in Marshall, you're gonna have the same people showing up to the same events, and they're ready to get to work, roll up their sleeves, and get something done. But maybe that means that we're not talking enough about what we're doing. We're not talking about what we're doing, and we're not talking to a diverse enough set of people. Because you're going to find the people that aren't going to have the buy-in, but you'd be surprised who does have the buy-in. And how passionate they become too. And the other thing is, you don't ask for everything all at once. So after I did all the research, we decided to do an impromptu pop-up food pantry at the university. You know, we did the research, we presented our numbers to the university, and it was pretty impactful. We had about 60 people in one room for a lunch and learn event, all the way up to the president of the university, community leadership. Marshall Radio News was there. So put on this excellent presentation about food insecurity and what it means and how it's impactful, and everybody's going, oh, that was really good. I gotta go to work. And you know, and granted, it was my role on campus to figure out what we do from there, but then when you start asking for that buy-in, you can't ask for everything at once. So can I have 5 minutes of your time? Can we sit down for maybe just a 15-minute meeting just to talk about this and see what we can do and collaborate? Can I come talk to your class about this? Will you give me some time for that? And those tiny little things that they are willing to give are going to turn into bigger things later on, because it's going to be impactful for them too. You have to put that narrative to the numbers to make it meaningful for them. So when we did our pop-up pantry, I asked for just a little, I think I had maybe 3 volunteers that day. And we served, we had intended on having the pantry open from 11 to 2. You know, campus culture is that with events, students trickle in a couple at a time over a few hours and then we're done. We served 61 students in 30 minutes and we were cleaned out. And we had students pouring in the door after that and we had nothing left. I mean, we were grateful that we had that kind of turnout, but it really painted this overall picture, you know, with myself and 3 other volunteers and about $500 worth of leveraged food from 3 different sources. That blew up the conversation campus-wide. And after that, we had people coming to us with their hands out going, give me something to do. So ask for just a little bit to begin with, make an impact with it, and then you can grow it. And even at that point, people can still give 5-10 minutes at a time, and you can still make an even bigger difference because you've got more people giving that 5-10 minutes at a time.
I just want to comment, one quick comment on that. The 2.5 years, I guess I want to give a visual for it. It's not like start something and then sort of chat, and then 2.5 years later something. I don't want to say just chatting, but the conversation, the advisory group that we worked with, say it's 8 or 9 faculty from 8 or 9 different disciplines. So we sit there and we say, okay, we have this problem. We have students on campus and all this incredible amount of resources here, and they are not connected in the most efficient way with the community in the region. So we'd say, okay, we went to a conference, learned about this particular platform we could use, went down to United Way, learned they were already using it, let's see how we can bridge it. And usually we meet every 2 weeks and be like, okay, those 7 out of 10 things are not working, let's go with these 3. There's a lot of laughter with it, there's a lot of like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of effort for not a lot of gain. But you begin to develop this kind of collective, shared sort of commitment and motivation to see it through. So it didn't feel like 2.5 years, I guess. Besides, things move very slowly in higher ed. That feels like, oh my God, not so long a time. But I was going to say also, you mentioned earlier the value of volunteer and service learning for the resume. What I was going to say is, we asked earlier today, how many of you would go out and volunteer alone? Like you have an opportunity to be part of an after-school program. Would you go alone? And I'm surprised about how many raised their hands and said, no, I wouldn't go alone, but I'll go with someone else. So I just think if you become aware of an opportunity and grab a friend, I'm usually comfortable going alone, but I know a friend who will never go anywhere alone. She's in her mid-40s, and I was just like, you know, pancake feet, let's go to this together. And what I wanted to end with is, the volunteering is a starting point. Like I know we have students in our program, we have service learning options. Usually they're 15 to 30 hours. And when we ask students, would you want to do this again? Over 90% semester to semester said, yes, I want more of these types of classes. And more than that, they say things like, well, I helped out with the after-school program, but I learned how hungry these kids are. So in Site Club, we're going to start our own effort at raising funds to support various agencies in the community that are addressing that particular topic. So now on their resume, they don't just say they volunteered, they say we initiated, we coordinated, we motivated other club members. They say a lot more about themselves than the volunteering. And it's that kind of growth over time that ends up giving you things to speak to and helps you become more clear about your own interests and so forth as you go along as well.
I was just going to mention the Dakota 38 and how it's evolved. When we originally got involved, it was just serving lunch. And then my boss and myself were like, they don't have any place to stay. They try to find different places to sleep at. A lot of the riders, you know, they're coming on their own funding. And so we were like, well, we can potentially help out with this. And then we realized, well, they need a meal and they need breakfast before they leave. And they do receive different funds from tribal communities, and there are just separate donors. But one of the basic things that they're really trying to establish is reconciliation between the communities. And so the evolvement of the Dakota 38 coming into Marshall has led to us having them in Marshall, having them overnight, but they continue to grow and expand in how many riders we're getting. And so we actually have grown out of 2 of locations that we're in, and so this next year, I have to come up with a new place to host them for meals, and potentially even to stay, because we only have 2 operational dorms on campus that allow visitors. And this year, there was a boiler problem or something in one of them, so we were down 1, and we couldn't even house all of the riders. So it's like, okay, I have to constantly kind of think about how to change that, and I have to utilize my resources. Thankfully, I have a number of people in this room with me that help me out with the riders, and I know that I can talk with them about what's available, but it's just constant kind of movement, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I also know I have to start probably writing grants, so that's another thing to think about, but just kind of moving through it. It's something I'm really passionate about, but I also want to be able to someday have somebody else take it over and let it be Marshall's own thing for reconciliation for the Southwestern community and the Dakota people.
Great, and I would like to add, Michelle and I and Jay working together, I take an opportunity to network everywhere I go, and just to think about how can I bring that to the students, or what can we bring. A lot of times we get asked to do diversity trainings and discussions, and so I'm always looking for opportunities. So, for example, right now, it's a wonderful opportunity to network and see what people are doing, exchange numbers, and I think it starts there a lot of times where, you look in your Rolodex when you are thinking about a project and you say, hey, you know what? I met someone at American Creed, and kind of go from there. So take every opportunity you can to network. All right, any other comments? All right.
They have treats here that they don't normally have, so.
We have treats. Treats are good. Please fill out your surveys. And Michelle would like to add.
Yes, I just want to thank especially SMSU and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for helping us out with these 3 different American Creed projects. For me personally, as the library director, and also personally, this has been incredibly powerful. I've only been here for 3 years. I came from a different part of the country. I find it interesting personally. A few of the struggles I had weren't that very different than the refugee immigrant experience, because when you come from one of the other coasts, Minnesota's a little different. So there is, again, that little cultural piece of it. It's not always just from another part of the world. So I've spent 3 years, and mostly I lived in urban environments, so more so than any place else I've lived, and you just made the perfect example of it. Around here, it's absolutely who you know. Because there's actually not a lot out there written or in places that you can find it. It's in the collective brain of longtime Marshall. So I have made it my job, and Paula can attest to this because I talk to her constantly about it. My job is to get that out from people's collective brain and into the Marshall community that's more freely. I'm an information specialist. That's important information. How can the library and the library staff facilitate that? So with that in mind, one of the things that has struck me about all 3 of these events, but this one in particular, these ladies up here really gave you a crack into their lives. Very personal comments that they made here. And it's really difficult to sit across the table with somebody in a much different situation where you may be on opposite sides and really be truly angry and not listen to that person when you know them from another place, right? So you've built that relationship. So one of the things that the library wants to do is to have these kinds of conversations so we can get to know each other as humans. So when we have those difficult conversations later in different situations, wherever they might be, we may be more willing to listen. That may be a little Pollyanna, but that's what the library's about, is being a little Pollyanna. So from that, for 3 years, I have wanted to start a project that we hope to start this summer and into this fall. And I couldn't think of a better name, so we're just calling it the Memoir Project. So I think what they've given as a good example is everybody has a story. I'm a librarian, so I'm all about stories. And I think some of the strongest lessons you learn are from stories and from other people's stories. So that's one of the things that we want to do, is to collect individuals in the community, collect their stories. We're coming up on 2 important anniversaries. Next year is the 150th anniversary of Lyon County, and 2 years after that is the 150th anniversary of Marshall. And I think it would be great to collect vignettes and stories of people's lives here, whether they've been really recent, like yours and mine, or whether, you know, I'm a 5th generation person who's lived here for a very long time. But collect those stories, because that gives us a great snapshot of what Marshall and Lyon County is today. So I hope you'll look for some of those things that we hope to be doing. And last, I want to say I agree. From these conversations, we hope to be able to find, as you mentioned, those like-minded people, and how we can move on from that. And I definitely would offer the library, we're always like-minded with everybody, we try to be, but really it's more that we're the soil to your ideas. There's an agricultural metaphor, right? So if you have an idea, or you want to bring people together to talk about whatever you're looking to grow, or to find like-minded people and figure out what those next steps are, we can certainly have those conversations here. To me, that's what the library and the community is all about. So I think that individually there's civic engagement, but I also agree that there's organizational engagement. And we have a lot of organizations in this community who do that. Kiwanis, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all kinds that are engaged that way. But I'd like the library to be thought of that way as well. So thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.